Let me ask a question. Who is in the audience this afternoon?
I see a bunch of people.
Okay then, I see a community.
I see family and friends.
I see teachers and students.
Okay, let me ask a different question. Which one of us is right?
Both of us, obviously. I mean, we both provided a bunch of different ways that you could describe this group of people.
But neither of us really answered the question. Who are they? We've just given an answer from our perspective down here.
Often, when we ask a question, we tend to look for one right answer. Who is in the audience? A bunch of people. That answer is technically correct, so we don't have to look anymore?
We found the reality of the situation, sure, but we know there's more to the story than this. A bunch of people is an answer that someone down here would give, but would anyone else say the same?
Like a cursory glance, these are cursory answers.
And each person's answer depends on their own perspective, but none are the entire truth.
We can pan around from these perspectives as much as we want, but it will never give us the clarity that moving towards or away from the audience will.
However big our picture gets, it will never be comprehensive until we get up and move the camera.
In any case, one of the first things we can do to expand our perspective is to do some research.
There are a few things that we need to consider when we're doing this.
For one case, the internet, as we all know, is a very valuable research tool. Nowadays, you can type in any subject you can think of, and within seconds have access to the most recent studies, the most thorough explanations, and the even more recent studies that question the results of the previous studies.
It's easy to get wrapped up in this sheer overload of information that we have today, but it's important to remember an advantage that books still have. Every time you open one, it has an author. You know their name, the publisher they worked with, and their 3 cats, 4 iguanas, and 5 dogs because you read it on their book jacket.
Websites don't have that. Take, for example, if you wanted to do some research on the infamous estrogen-mimicking chemical bisphenol A. This is what you get. Do you see, although it's kind of small, the yellow ad icon on the top 2 results? That means that somebody paid for those links to be placed at the top of the page so that their information could reach people first.
The easiest route is to take that first link, which leads here. They don't seem to waste any time, do they? We don't know who wrote this, but we do know that they like to repeat how BPA has been safely used in consumer products for over 40 years.
Sounds good, case closed. Except, we don't know where that information came from. We don't know who the author is, what their credentials are, or what biases they might have, and this page doesn't really give much indication.
Do you know when we finally found who owns bisphenolA.org? When we read the terms and conditions. Nearly 4,000 words of unformatted legal jargon where they didn't expect anyone to bother looking.
In this impenetrable wall of words, we find the authors, the American Chemistry Council, whose members include 4 of the 5 BPA-producing companies in the United States. It's probably not too much of a stretch to assume that they're a little more focused on money than information.
You see, if all we had done was click on the first link on Google and believe everything we read, we would only be armed with the information that the BPA industries want us to have.
When we have to do research for school, our teachers always tell us to look for websites with .org, .gov, and .edu in order to make sure that we get the most reliable information.
We all know background information about these domains. Some are from the government, others organizations, networks, and so on.
The thing is, though, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the website itself. It's true, .orgs and .govs tend to have more accurate information, but that doesn't always mean that they have all the information.
And if you fail to tell the whole truth, that's often no better than lying.
It's not only enough to be armed with the information you find. That information came from somewhere, and knowing where is even more important than the content itself.
When we assume that the most popular source of information is true, it means that we're only looking at one stance, through one viewpoint. Finder.
If you fail to expand your field of vision, then you only have so many resources to utilize when you have to solve a problem. What if you're about to become a parent?
Wouldn't you want to have the most accurate information to protect your family?
If you were to expand your field, you would know that you can find more information and know to act accordingly.
We need to go beyond checking the sources of our information if we want to behave in healthy, balanced ways. Out on the streets, having the ability to make better decisions has real implications when it comes to making decisions.
Take, for instance, the outrageously high amount of homelessness in Honolulu today. On any given day, 6,300 people are left without homes and financially insecure. Lately, we've been placing a lot of emphasis on how these people have been affecting our tourism, sidewalks, and public transportation.
And how have we helped these people? We made it so that they can't be there. Look at that, you guys, we solved homelessness. I don't see any more homeless people. Do you?
You hear how ridiculous it sounds when you say it out loud? I mean, look, we didn't solve homelessness. We just made it so that they couldn't be on the sidewalks. Out of sight, out of mind.
With this photograph, sure, but we know there's more to the story than this, and we know now that one picture isn't nearly enough to constitute a whole solution.
The problem is, people do this every day. They take their small frame and try and paint a picture within it.
With such a small scope in mind, a solution often becomes another problem, because the painting depicted an axe when the entire scene was someone cutting down a tree.
We have a tendency to only focus on Honolulu's problems in this manner. We see that homeless people are a nuisance, or that a certain hike is dangerous, or that schools aren't performing as well as they could.
All of these are legitimate problems that need solutions, but they're all complicated and subjective issues.
When this subjectivity is ignored, we come up with solutions that are hasty and ineffective. We just set up planter boxes to keep homeless people off the streets, or we put up big red and white signs to fix dangerous hikes, or we throw money at schools and tell them to fix themselves.
These aren't wise decisions. We're just chopping off the flower of a weed instead of attacking it from its roots.
When you ignore a situation's roots,
like raising taxes to fix every problem,
or when you fail to see an entire scene,
like getting all your information from a single news channel,
short-sighted decisions are made.
We get Band-Aids instead of surgery.
Because our doctor didn't take an x-ray.
The bottom line is, we need to communicate.
Every one of you has your own unique perspective. It is your responsibility to share it with everybody else.
Just as we are all responsible for listening.
Bobbi and I have worked together to put together what we have said today.
Because how could we ask you to believe us any other way?
You need to look past what's right in front of you, whether it's the first result on Google, the first thing that you see in the morning when you see the homeless people sleeping on the bus stop, or when you have your first answer to a question.
Checking the sources of your information, considering possible outcomes, and considering other people's perspective is just the beginning. In a world that's becoming increasingly complex and connected, informed decisions are imperative.
Opinions and the decisions they influence are varying from person to person, mindset to mindset, no matter where you look. How can we expect information to be so objective?
The only way to approach this impossible objective reality is to understand all the facets that come with it.
It is impossible to comprehend them all, but the more you have, the clearer your picture will be.
This big picture isn't finite.
It's infinite in all directions.
Often, when you're asked what's the big picture, you expand on that subject, but you do so on the same plane. A bunch of people is more descriptive than, or a bunch of people, families, friends, and community is much more descriptive than a bunch of people, but all we've done is expand from our original perspective. We've just looked at what's right in front of us.
The big picture is no longer what you think it is. It's not what you can say to expand what your point of view can see. It's what you can learn from others and how you can fit their perspectives into your view of the world.
We are given countless opportunities every day to ask questions, hear stories, and adopt perspectives. Every conversation you have is part of a 360-degree view of the world, encouraging you to stitch together viewpoints and create a three-dimensional image.
The next time you have a question to ask, understand the roots of that question. At the base, you will no longer only be asking, what is in your picture, but you will know to ask, how big is your picture?